Hi, this is Hilal. In this video on Mathematical Economics series, we will solve a numerical on finding the producer surplus and consumer surplus. The question is, given demand function P is equal to 32 minus 8Q, where P is the price and Q is the quantity. And similarly, the supply function is P is equal to 12.2Q, where P is the price and Q is the quantity. Find consumer surplus and producer surplus. So we have to find the consumer surplus and producer surplus. First of all, to find the surpluses, we will equate the demand function with supply function because equilibrium is attained at that point where the demand curve and supply curve intersect each other. Therefore, for equilibrium, demand is equal to supply. That is, I will equate this equation with the supply function. This will become 32 minus 8Q is equal to 12 plus 2Q. Now I will solve this for quantity. That is, this minus 8Q when transposed will become plus 8Q. So 8Q plus 2Q is 10Q is equal to, now 32 when transposed this 12 become minus. So 32 minus 12, that is equal to 20. Implies Q is equal to 20 divided by 10, that is Q is equal to 2. So equilibrium quantity is 2. Now we have to find the equilibrium price. Now we can insert the value of Q in either the demand function or supply function to get the value of P, that is equilibrium price. So put Q is equal to 2 in demand function. So this will become P is equal to 32 minus 8 into the value of Q is 2. So this will become 32 minus 16. 32 minus 16, that is equal to 16. Implies the equilibrium price is 16. Now, after finding the equilibrium price and the quantity, we are now ready to find the consumer surplus. Now, consumer surplus, as we know, is the difference what the consumer is willing to pay and what he actually pays. The difference between these two prices gives us the consumer surplus. In earlier videos, I have explained how to use the definite integral in finding producer surplus and consumer surplus. Now I will use the same idea here. First of all, I will find the total expenditure because P and Q are given. P times Q will give us the total expenditure of the consumer. Therefore, P into Q is equal to 2 into 16, that is equal to 32. So the total expenditure is 32. Now I will find, or we will find the consumer's surplus. Now consumer's surplus is equal to the definite integral from 0 to the equilibrium quantity and integrating the demand function with respect to quantity. That is, the demand function is 32 minus 8Q dQ and subtracting from it the total expenditure, that is PQ. So I will write here PQ. Now, since the equilibrium quantity is 2, so I will write 2 in place of Q here. Now integrating this will become, now the integral of 32 with respect to Q is 32Q. That is 32Q minus, here this is 8. Now the integral of Q is Q square divided by 2. Q square divided by 2, because this exponent is the exponent of q is added with 1, so this will become 1 plus 1 is 2, and we divide by the resulting exponent, that is 2 here, and integrating this from 0 to 2 minus p into q, that is 32. Now I will evaluate these terms first from the upper limit, and then I will subtract this whole by the lower limit. Now this will become, I will place 2 in place of q first, so this will become 32 into the q is here 2 minus, now here 2 ones are 2 twos are, so here it is 4. I will write here this is 4. Now this is 4. Now the way q is 2. Now this will become 2 square, that is integrating from the upper limit. We have put the upper limit value here. Now we will subtract this from the lower limit. Now we will place 0 in place of q. Now 32 into 0, that is 0, minus here 0 square divided by 2, that is also 0. So the value of the lower limit here is 0. So I will write here this is 0. This is equal to minus 32. Now this will become 32 times 2 is 64 minus, now 2 2s are 4, 4s are 16 minus 32. Now subtracting this, now 64 minus 32 is 32. Now this is 32 minus 16, that is 16. Therefore the consumer surplus is 16 here. Similarly, we will find the producer's surplus. Now producer surplus is the difference between the price producers are willing and able to supply a good for and the price they actually receive. The difference between these two gives us the producer's surplus. Now here P into Q, that is 32. This will be the total revenue here. This is the price that they actually receive. Now to find the producer surplus. Now producer surplus is the difference between the price producers are willing and able to supply a good for and the price they actually receive. Now this producer surplus is calculated like this is equal to the definite integral from 0 to the equilibrium quantity and integrating the supply function, that is this 12 minus 2q, sorry it is here, 2q is not is here. Now producer surplus is the difference between the price producers are willing and able to supply a good for and the price they actually receive. The difference between these two gives us the producer surplus. Now mathematically this means producer surplus is equal to, that is equal to the price producers are willing and able to supply for a good, that is price into quantity, minus the price they actually receive, that is integrating the supply function from 0 to the equilibrium quantity, that is 12 plus 2q with respect to quantity. Now this p into q, that is given us, that is 32, that is 32 minus, now we have to integrate this supply function with respect to q. So here I will write 2, that is the equilibrium quantity. Now I will integrate this supply function. That is, the integral of 12 with respect to quantity is 12q, as we have seen in the rules of differentiation. So this is 12q plus, now the integral of q is q square divided by 2. That is, this is our 2 here. Now the integral of this is q square divided by 2, and evaluating this from 0 to 2. Now this will become 32 minus, now this 2 and 2 will get cancelled. Now we have to evaluate these terms first from the upper limit and then subtract the same terms but inserting 0 in place of the q. That is, we will evaluate first at the upper limit, that is 2. So I will write in place of q, I will write 2, that is 12 into 2 plus, now this 2 and 2 will get cancelled out. Here this is q square, that is 2 square. Now I have evaluated these terms at q is equal to 2. Now I will subtract the same, these same terms, but in place of q will be 0. So I will subtract this from that is the lower limit. So this will become 12 into q, that is 12 into 0 is 0, plus here 0 square divided by 2, that is also 0. So here it is 0. Now this will become 32 minus, here this is 12 2s are 24, 24, now 2 2s are 4, so this will become minus 4. This is 32 minus 24 minus 20, 24 minus 4, that is 28, so this is 28. Now 32 minus 28, that is 4. So our producer surplus is 4. Now we will see the graphical depiction. What does this mean? Now if I plot the graph, this is the price axis and this is the quantity axis. Now I have to, first this is the demand function, I will plot this demand function on this. Since the intercept here is 32 and minus 8q, so let us say this is our demand function, intercept is your 32. Similarly, our supply function is 12 plus 2q, so the intercept here is 12. So let us say this is like, this is the 12, the intercept is 12 here. So this is our supply function, that is 12 plus 2q, and this was our demand function, that is 32 minus 8q. Now the equilibrium quantity is 2. So if sorry, I forget to write the price on vertical axis. So here it is price axis and this is the quantity axis. Now the equilibrium quantity is 2. So this is the point of equilibrium where the demand and supply function intersect. Now equilibrium, as we have got here, the equilibrium price is 2. So here it is, sorry, equilibrium quantity is 2. Similarly, the equilibrium price we have calculated somewhere, that is 16. So here it is 16 is the equilibrium price. Now the consumer surplus is that portion of the graph which is below the equilibrium price, sorry, which is above the equilibrium price and below the demand curve. That is this portion. This portion represents the consumer's surplus. Consumer's surplus is that portion on the graph which is above the equilibrium price, and below the demand curve here. So this shaded portion represents the consumer surplus. Similarly, the producer surplus is the area which is below the equilibrium price and above the supply function. Now, the area below the equilibrium price and above the supply function. So this portion represents, this is producer surplus, this is producer surplus, and this region represents the consumer surplus. Consumers. So now let us recapitulate. We were given a demand function and a supply function, and we were told to find the consumer surplus and the producer surplus. Now to find those surpluses, first of all, we will equate demand and supply function. That is, equilibrium is attained at that point where the two curves intersect, the demand curve and the supply curve. So what we have done, we have equated this demand function with the supply function. That is, 32 minus 8q is equal to 12 plus 2q. This was the demand function and this was the supply function. And after that, we have solved these functions for q and we got the equilibrium quantity, that is q. Now to find the equilibrium price, we put q is equal to 2 in either the demand function or in supply function to get the equilibrium price. That is, we put q is equal to 2 in the demand function. From there we got the equilibrium price. Now we have to find the total expenditure. This total expenditure is p into q, that is 2 into 16, that is equal to 32, which we have calculated here. Now, consumer surplus, as we know, is the difference between what consumers are willing to pay and what they actually pay. The difference between these two prices gives us the consumer surplus. This is the portion that the consumers are willing to pay, and this portion, this PQ, represents what they actually pay. That is, consumer surplus is equal to the definite interval from 0 to the equilibrium quantity, and integrating the demand function with respect to Q and subtracting from this the total expenditure, that is PQ. Now integrating this demand function gives us 32Q minus 8Q squared divided by 2. Now we have to evaluate this from 0 to 2 and subtract from this the given total expenditure, that is 32. Now we have evaluated these terms. First add q is equal to 2, then we have subtracted the same these terms but evaluating at q is equal to 0, that is 32 into 2, that is the value of q is equal to 2, minus here it is 4, when cancelling this 2 with add, this is 4 into q square, that is 4 into 2 square, this 2, minus the same these same terms but evaluating these terms at q is equal to 0. Now when q is equal to 0, this will become 32 minus 32 into 0, so this will become 0, minus here 4 into q square, that is 0 square, so this term will also become 0, so this is 0 minus 0, so I have written this 0 here, minus 32. Now after solving this, we got this consumer surplus. Now producer surplus is given by the difference between the price producers are willing and able to supply a good for and the price they actually receive. The difference between the two gives us the producer surplus. Here this P into Q represents the price producers are willing and able to supply a good for, minus this represents this definite integral of the supply function represents the price that the producers actually receive. Now the difference between these two gives us the producer surplus. Now P into Q, which we have calculated, that is 32, I have written here 32, minus integrating this supply function with respect to quantity, that is the integral of 12 is 12Q. Similarly here it is 2 Now the interval of Q is Q square divided by 2, which we have seen how in earlier videos how to integrate a power function, or I have explained all the rules of integration there. You can see there. Now this is 32 minus. Now we have to evaluate this from the lower limit 0 and upper limit 2. That is, we put the value of 2 in place of Q here. That is 12 into 2 plus here it is 2 square. That is evaluating at the upper limit minus the same these same terms, but evaluating at the lower limit. Here the lower limit is 0, so this will become 12 into 0 is 0 plus 0 square is also 0, so 0 plus 0 is 0. So I have subtracted this 0 from these terms. Now after solving we got the producer surplus 4. Now graphical depiction is like this. We place the demand curve, that is 32 minus 8Q. Here the intercept of the demand curve is 32, so I have written here 32. Since the demand curve slopes downwards because of the law of demand, so this becomes our demand function. Similarly, our supply function was 12 plus 2Q, so this 12 was the intercept. Since the supply function slopes upwards, so this is our supply function because of the law of supply, as we know this from the economics. Now similarly we have calculated the equilibrium price, that was 16, which we have calculated somewhere here, that is 16 here. Similarly our equilibrium quantity was 2, which we have calculated initially, that is Q is equal to 2. Now this is the equilibrium quantity, this is the equilibrium price. Now the consumer surplus is the portion on the graph which is above the equilibrium price. Since equilibrium price is 16, so the portion above the graph, above the equilibrium price and below the demand curve, gives us the consumer surplus. Similarly, the portion of the graph that is below the equilibrium price and above the supply curve gives us the producer surplus. Now this red portion represents the producer surplus, and this green portion represents the consumer surplus. The total surplus is the addition of these two areas. So this was all about finding the producer surplus and consumer surplus. Eyvallah kardeşim.